Thank you for joining us for Entrepreneurs in the SDGs, the trends, breakthroughs, and bottlenecks from the accelerators that support them. Over the past decade, the rise of capacity development programs for social entrepreneurship has injected new energy into the pursuit of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Day to day, the people on this call, whom I'll reveal in just a moment, put those entrepreneurs forward, celebrating and accelerating what they're doing. Today, however, we thought it might be interesting to hear firsthand stories and insights from the experts behind these accelerators, who have seen and shepherded hundreds of entrepreneurs on their journeys. But before we dive into the discussions, we wanted to set the stage. So, an entrepreneur is an individual who starts a business. Social entrepreneurship is running ventures primarily focused on social and environmental goals rather than profit. And the UN SDGs are 17 global goals set in 2015 to address issues like poverty, inequality, and climate change by 2030. Social entrepreneurship and the SDGs are closely linked in their mission to create a better and more sustainable world. Social entrepreneurs, through their innovative approaches and commitment to impact, are pivotal in driving progress toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Earlier this year, the Schwab Foundation's Global Alliance for Social Entrepreneurship released the State of Social Enterprise 2024, which brought together data from more than 80 countries gathered between 2013 and 2023. It aims to inform policymakers and business leaders about the underestimated contribution of social enterprise towards global GDP, employment, and the Sustainable Development Goals. We have Daniel Novak, head of the Global Alliance for Social Entrepreneurship, with us today for this conversation. And for perspective, entrepreneurs in the audience, there are approximately 10 million social enterprises across the world, generating around 2 trillion in revenue each year and creating nearly 200 million jobs. My favorite learning from the report, however, is that you are bridging the gender gap, with 1 in 2 social enterprises worldwide led by women, compared to only 1 in 5 in conventional enterprises. Transform is an impact accelerator that unites corporates, donors, and investors and academics to support visionary enterprises across Africa, Asia, and beyond. It tests and scales new solutions that tackle environmental challenges, improve health and well-being, and build inclusive economies. Today, we have Lisa Hawks, Global Sustainability Senior Manager at Unilever, which may be a bit confusing as to why she's here, but actually she leads the livelihoods, health, and sanitation pillar and is the Africa point of contact at Transform. And we have Venu Gupta, Managing Director of Acceleration at the Toilet Board Coalition, with us as well. The Toilet Board Coalition was founded by multinational corporations to accelerate business solutions to SDG 6 and has set its sights to accelerate 1,000 businesses by 2030. So I will stop here because why you're here today is to hear them talk, not me. So first of all, just to orient us in each of the scopes of your programs, Daniel, we can start with you. Can you tell us a bit about what SDGs your program supports? Are there particular geographic focus or themes to your work? And then perhaps you can pass the microphone, as it were, to Lisa and Venu.
Yeah, more than happy to, and thanks for having us here on the conversation. Very much looking forward to it. I would say we have 2 hats. We do have a program with the Schwab Foundation that for the last 26 years has been awarding leading social innovators around the world, in a sense that they have really brought their ventures to scale and can then at that scale also influence the conversations in the business space and in the public policy space. So we're inviting them to join us in Davos every year at the annual meeting, but then also throughout the year at other meetings, and support them with some really excellent insights, from example, from Harvard University on systems change, because many of these social innovators actually have scaled to a point where they realize they can't scale anymore. They need coalitions, they need allies, they need partnerships, and it's rare to find them. So that's been going on for the last 26 years, and some really inspiring social innovators we get to work with. The other hat that I'm bringing to the conversation today is that we're a bit of the accelerator of the accelerators as a global alliance where we're bringing together more than 120 members by now that work together to support social entrepreneurs. But they themselves, they've been struggling to speak as one sector. And so the State of Social Enterprise that you just mentioned that was published earlier this year hopes to give them that voice, but also position social innovation in the private and the public sector as a tool for development, so a tool to achieve the SDGs and across the board. Yes, there is a big footprint in our community around healthcare, a big footprint in economic empowerment and poverty alleviation. So that definitely is a big topic because we are a bit leaning towards low and middle income countries when it comes to representing our community, but it really goes across the board in SDGs. And I think what you said in the beginning, that it really just highlights the contribution of social entrepreneurs. It's really not limited to one single sector. It's really across the board. And maybe actually to hand over to Lisa with that topic, because we are glad that Lisa is part of our alliance. The Unilever, but also the Transform team works with the 120 members at the Global Alliance for Social Entrepreneurship. And we've been really glad to work on things like non-financial support to social entrepreneurs, helping set up some partnerships, but also insights into how can we make this improve this and improve the value we can create for social entrepreneurs. So really glad that Lisa is here with us today.
Thank you, Daniel. So I'm here representing Transform, which is an impact accelerator. It's led by Unilever, the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and EY, and it provides a combination of grant support plus technical assistance and business advice from Unilever and EY. And we do that for social entrepreneurs in Africa and Asia. And we believe that this combination of money and expertise is definitely greater than the sum of its parts. So far, since 2015, we've worked with entrepreneurs and researchers on 125 projects in 17 countries and positively impacted the lives of more than 16 million people. So Alex, in response to your question on the SDGs we work on. So first of all, we work on SDG 3, so good health and well-being through our digital health pillar. We work, and as I know you do, on SDG 6, on clean water and sanitation. And it's great that we're able to share learnings like this because we've got a very complementary and in some cases overlapping portfolio between Transform and Toilet Board Coalition. We work on SDG 8 through Decent, which is about decent work. We've got a program which is about livelihoods. This is related to Unilever's value chain, so that could be livelihoods of smallholder farmers or livelihoods of shopkeepers, for instance. We work on SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, through our work on plastics, and we work on both plastics recycling models and refill models, climate action, especially linked to regenerative agriculture, so that's goal number 13. And finally, I think what we share in common with everybody on this call is that we do this through partnerships, and we are a coalition. We're having a conversation as coalitions here. So I feel that probably the crown on top of that list for all of us is likely to be SDG 17, which is about partnerships for the goals.
Yeah, over to you.
I can. Yeah. So, I mean, as the name suggests, our focus is SDG 6.2. We do that only, nothing else. And as you know, 3.5 billion people across the world do not have access to safely managed sanitation. And the unique approach that Toilet Board Coalition brings to this problem is that we accelerate business solutions to the sanitation crisis. Entrepreneurs the world over are already creating new technologies, new business solutions. And we think that we need to accelerate those business solutions to achieve the SDG goals in time. So through our Accelerator program, which is our flagship program, we connect entrepreneurs with business mentors, with investors, with governments, and ensure that they're able to accelerate their businesses and thereby accelerate their impact. And we feel that if we can accelerate business solutions to a sizable segment of the 3.5 billion people who do not have access to managed sanitation, that will not only reduce the burden on public finances, but it will also lead the way in creating customer-centric solutions that will be readily adopted by communities. That's the work that we do, and our focus is SDG 6.2. Great to be here with Lisa and Daniel, and of course Alex, and to discuss our mutual motivation in moving the needle.
When you actually,
Great.
if I may ask you something on this very topic, because I think sanitation and is actually one of the topics where there's a conversation coming in, which we hear a lot of times, is that in so many ways social entrepreneurs are stepping in where either the market fails or where the public sector fails to actually deliver on common goods, right? In many countries, one would argue that sanitation is a common good that should be supplied by the state, shouldn't be a private sector initiative. But obviously in sanitation, as you said, we actually see the efficiency of providing it from a private sector perspective. Have you seen that as a trajectory over the last years, or has it always been recognized that in low and middle income countries, private sector solutions in sanitation are just as viable as the public sector investments?
I think it's grown over the years, Daniel. Certainly, I mean, I can say 6 years from now, the whole concept of sanitation economy, that market approaches to sanitation are possible and viable, and more entrepreneurship is possible, would have required a tough sell to the government. I think now increasingly governments thinking out of their own sort of limitations are more friendly towards this concept, and are creating the right kind of favorable environments for entrepreneurship to flourish. To give you a quick example, I think in many jurisdictions across the world, government tenders were sort of biased towards very financially strong, established players in the market, and therefore biased against young innovators, so to speak. And I think the change that we are seeing over the last 5 years is that more and more governments are now recognizing that the young innovators or the new technologies might not have the kind of financial muscle, but they still can offer something, which can come at a reduced cost, can be rapidly deployed, and can provide not only sanitation, but lots of bonus social impact like climate change, agricultural, regenerative agriculture, etc. I think that change is definitely coming in.
And if I can come in on this point as well, I think it doesn't have to be either or. So I do see a very strong role of government partnering or utilities partnering with startups and SMEs. This was an experiment we did at Transform, where we recognized, especially in sanitation, but I think this is a trend across the whole of the social entrepreneurship spectrum. These entrepreneurs, like any business, they can't do it in a vacuum. They have to be operating within the regulatory framework. And probably in sanitation, it's at the extreme end because the regulations are catching up with the innovators rather than being in front in some markets. And so we wanted to test our model of this combination of grant assistance and assistance from Unilever and EY. And we did it with African utilities. This was in collaboration with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we worked with 2 utilities, one in Kenya and one in Zambia. And we worked on testing business models and incubating within those. But one of those projects actually was a collaboration with a Transform and Toilet Board Coalition funded grantee, Salivation. And that combination of having a utility who have engineers, they have land, they have the regulatory relationship, things that I've seen sanitation entrepreneurs struggle to get. They've got the solutions, but they can't get the land. They really struggle to get the meetings with the regulator, and letting everybody kind of play to their strengths. So yeah, I wanted to make sure it's a kind of additive, not an either or in this case.
That's super interesting, which is something we are seeing as well in other areas, like, for example, social procurement, where we've been pushing the idea of the opportunity in companies buying from social entrepreneurs for quite some time now. Because if you look at your financing spectrum as an entrepreneur, obviously you can look at grants, you can look at equity, but I think having been an entrepreneur myself, the best form of financing is revenue. So if you can actually get larger agreements in place with companies, you can really move the needle for your scale. But at the same time, it's quite tricky for these companies to do because it's a new concept and they have already a lot of policies in place for the supply chain. So actually collaborating with the public sector, which is investing now into procurement, and therefore also having a bit of a trickle-down effect on companies that are interested to supply the public sector, become a supplier of the public sector, really starts to create a momentum to say, okay, we should think about what can we actually do in our supply chain? What are the impact opportunities we have in the supply chain? To a point where we now had a few years ago already estimated the opportunity in social procurement to reach $500 billion in the next 10 years. So actually quite a significant amount of financing when you look at the overall scheme of things.
That's amazing.
I'm so glad you said that, Daniela. That's the exact kind of collaboration that we are enabling within the Accelerator program. Large companies working with SMEs.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that on multiple fronts. We see that, business leaders, they bring a sort of scale perspective that's not often found within SMEs and SME founders. And, business leaders know how to serve 1 million customers, know how to produce 1 million units of product, deliver 1 million units of services. And that's the exact scale perspective that entrepreneurs require. Imagine their business solution at scale. And once they can clearly imagine that at scale, then they can see a very clear roadmap towards it. Additionally, and I think this was your point, is that corporates have very large scaled up supply chains, and those supply chains might have many opportunities for SMEs to collaborate. And just the momentum of those supply chains can sometimes provide a huge tailwind to SME business models to grow, really amplify their business model.
Yeah, we absolutely see that as our role as well, to drive more momentum within the private sector for these kinds of topics. We now have more than 40 companies in our Corporate Social Innovation Council, and many of them have also signed a pledge to increase investments into social innovation. So apart from the policy traction we've actually seen in the last years, we had a UN resolution on social economy in 2023. We had the European Action Plan on the social economy. We're seeing the adoption of the African Union 10-year strategy on the social economy, and so forth and so forth. Quite a few national strategies, a lot of traction on the public sector side. And I think now we're also seeing that in the private sector, and we wanted to couple that. And really glad also to see many companies leading on that front. It doesn't come without challenges though, right? Because it's also a bit of the, squaring the circle when you're trying to bring together social entrepreneurs and big corporations, both in terms of the cultures, which you already see when you bring a startup together with a company, but then also when it comes to actually safeguarding the mission of social entrepreneurs at scale, right? When you are working under the pressures of cost reduction, especially in supply chain, with that, and obviously, working at scale, delivering a constant quality, and impact isn't necessarily baked into the collaborations. So I was actually also curious to hear from Lisa on how you're mastering that in your collaboration at Unilever.
Thank you. I wanted to say, I don't think we should forget the role of champions in this process. So it's something we're really seeking to do through Transform, because we're giving entrepreneurs the opportunity to validate their business in Unilever's value chain. And then we hope that they generate evidence of a win-win between us and other FMCG and other corporates as well, that they can then use to sell into us. So we've got a couple of examples, and I know Alex wanted us to talk about some stories, so it's a good opportunity to talk about some stories. So moving into the world of plastics, we've been working with a fantastic enterprise called Hasrudala Innovations in India. I see you're both nodding, so all three of you nodding, so maybe they're well known to you. But they produce fair trade plastics And Transform worked with them to both provide funding that increased the capacity of their organization in terms of the volumes of plastic they were able to process, invested in some equipment that was very useful for their safety and environmental policies. And then really importantly, through the interaction with Transform, we were able to help them do that sell-in. And I think that having somebody hand-holding during that process, that sounds a bit, actually, I'd like to retract that. I think enabling and supporting, it always has to be driven by the entrepreneur. But sometimes when you're working in a large organization, or any organization, you can see where the blockers are, and if there's been a miscommunication, people saying the same words but meaning different things. And so having some champions to be able to intervene in that process is really, really important. And the wonderful outcome of that story is that Hasrudala are able to provide their fair trade plastics to Unilever's Sunsilk Naturals brand in India. And so that post-consumer recycled fair trade plastic is now on the shelves. And I also would like to say that I think that I agree that businesses are extremely cost-driven, but certainly in Transform, we've seen examples where it's a win-win-win, where there are examples where the social entrepreneurs are able to outcompete others in the market, and that is fantastic. One more example very quickly, which I'd like to bring in, which again is a shared example with Toilet Board Coalition, is with Bangladeshi enterprise Bamijo, who provide public toilets in Dhaka in Bangladesh. And through the support which both Transform and Toilet Board Coalition have provided, Unilever in Bangladesh have signed a 3-year advertising deal for Domestos. And I love this because it's from a selfish Unilever perspective, that's very much in line with our Domestos brand vision, both in terms of what the product does, but also where we're advertising it and giving that advertising spend to a social entrepreneur.
And I think that's super interesting, because you're, in everything that you just mentioned in the examples, you're directly making the link to the business case for the company, right? And I think obviously in our space, sometimes there is a bit of a reluctance to talk about this, because obviously a lot of the social entrepreneurs, maybe also listening in right now, are very much driven by the mission and by the impact, right? So there's a big tendency to look at the moral case of doing good, which is absolutely there, right? But I think it's important to recognize that as many as we all here as persons are interested in this impact, if you want to make these collaborations work in the long run, you have to institutionalize it. And at the moment, that is the main thing to do. That is the business case around it. So to showcase why it's important, even if we all have left the roles that we're currently having, why it's important to the business to continue. And I think that's a significant change we've seen over the last couple of years, especially as the topic of social entrepreneurship and social innovation is moving out of the CSR corner into core business and as a business capability. Earlier this year, we released the Corporate Social Innovation Compass, which showcases how companies can work with social entrepreneurs, but also what are the business benefits they can potentially reap from those collaborations. Because again, you've seen it over and over in the past that, partnerships have been championed by one person. As you said, they're super important in getting this into the company in the first place. But then when they leave the company, the partnership dies too. And I think that business case is the important second step to say, why does it have a role in the core business? So really great to hear that that's how you're thinking about it. And I think that's a trend we're seeing overall where companies are stepping up now.
Yes. And I also think there is a role in creating some space, both time and financial budgets, to help figure out how these innovations land. Because often what we're talking about here is business models where it might be that the value is here, it might be the value is here. And part of what we need to do together with the organization is figure out where do they dock in. And I think it's unreasonable to ask a social enterprise to pay for that. The businesses will not pay for it either. And I think there's a really strong role for grant funding to de-risk that testing process for both parties.
Then obviously also the other thing we're seeing is regulation. The CSDDD is putting pressure on global supply chains, and therefore, I think at the moment there's a lot of governance and tick marking to actually just push down responsibility to the suppliers. But I think we can already see now that in the long run that's not sustainable. You have to invest into solutions, which you're clearly doing already. So I think that's another thing we're seeing where there's yet another ecosystem that's being developed. So SAP, one of our partners as well, and also one of the partners in the Transform Support Hub, has integrated social entrepreneurs into their Ariba network, which is a $4 trillion annual turnover marketplace for B2B transactions. So it's a huge marketplace. And a big topic for companies was that in the absence of programs like Transform or dedicated social entrepreneurship programs, it's really difficult for companies to find and identify social entrepreneurs because they don't have the expertise, right? But with that integration into Ariba, there's now 4,500 social entrepreneurs on the platform that can actually be identified by a tick mark, right? So you can go into the system and basically, your SAP version of Google search for a social entrepreneur in certain materials. And I think that's an ecosystem development we're seeing, which is, again, goes beyond one single organization. SAP couldn't do that with all of the ecosystem partners like People on Planet First, one of their implementing partners, to actually lift that. But that's the collaboration where the collaboration really makes a huge difference.
I'm going to jump in here. Thank you. This has been really, really interesting and exactly what we hoped for. So thank you. And speaking of ecosystem innovation and really jumps forward. So we're going to move in just before we wrap up into what I'm calling rapid fire round. So I have two questions and you have maximum one sentence to answer them. And I will enforce this. It can be a long run on sentence, but yes. So first question, and I'll give you a moment to think. Venu, I'm going to come to you first, though. And so Daniel and Lisa, you have a slight advantage here. There is a huge focus on AI. If we talk about innovation and leaps forward, so how do you feel that AI can accelerate progress for entrepreneurs around the SDGs? Venu. Go.
I think the immediate answer that comes to mind is that AI can significantly increase the productivity of entrepreneurs. They can focus more on strategic tasks, and AI can take care of more the operative tasks.
Great. Lisa.
Yes, and I hope that it will accelerate the learnings between organizations. Because it can read and digest such an enormous quantity of information that humans cannot.
Absolutely. And Daniel?
I think AI can be a significant enabler for scale for social innovators, but more importantly, I think that social innovators play a key role in designing the technology in a way that's context specific and can actually drive meaningful impact for communities around the world.
Excellent. Yes, could not agree more. Okay, and then second rapid fire question is, what is your favorite or recent resource for social entrepreneurs? And we'll also try to share these in the chat if you don't quite catch what they say, so no stress. Daniel, I'll come to you first. We'll do the reverse order this time. So Lisa, you've got a luxurious seat right in the middle, both ways. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, maybe, if I may, I'm going to break the rules a little bit because social entrepreneurs are always a bit more relative when it comes to rules. So I'll maybe mention two. One is actually just today we released the PRISM framework, which is a framework that's helping social innovators to adopt AI in an ethically responsible way. It comes with a readiness assessment that highlights what has to be in place for a social innovator to adopt AI at which level, because obviously you can tinker with it in the beginning, but then there's a big difference to actually implementing it as an AI first organization, and different prerequisites need to be in place to do that. So encourage everyone to have a look at that. It's a framework we were lucky enough to develop together with Microsoft and EY and 50 plus social innovators leading in this space. And the other tool I would highly recommend to everybody listening in is the Transform Support Hub, which is a collection of tools, really. So again, an accelerator of accelerators, in the sense that it's your window towards non-financial support, and also in some cases, I guess, financial support. So you can look up the different opportunities to grow your venture there.
And Lisa, over to you.
At Transform, we've been working with Johns Hopkins University, and they've been developing a toolkit for entrepreneurs to drive better WASH outcomes. We're going to be talking about this on both the in-person and online session in World Water Week in August. So I'd love to post the links in the chat for that one.
I'll do that. Absolutely. And then Venu, over to you.
So we've launched the Sanitation Economy 101 tool, which is right now a 3-module, very easy online tool that speaks to the history and context and potential impact of the sanitation economy. I would recommend that highly to sanitation entrepreneurs, and we'll of course
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Lisa, Daniel, and Venu for joining us today. I think I can speak for hopefully the full audience, but this was a fascinating conversation. And we really appreciate your time. And to all the entrepreneurs listening, we encourage you. We're here to support you. We'd love to hear from you. Please do feel free to connect with these individuals and with our organizations. And we want to see you do what you do best. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.